All right. Hello and welcome everyone to another Chat and Learn here with Power to Fly. My name is Mariella Marie, and as always, I'm super excited to roll into this next hour with you all. I had a chance to speak with our guest speaker, and actually, she's just on the other side of the border here. I'm in Argentina. Not just, that is an exaggeration, but she's in Brazil. And I'll pass the mic to her in just a moment so she can tell you more about herself. But before we get started, just want to go over some quick housekeeping rules here so everyone feels comfortable and confident throughout this next hour. I know the world is crazy right now, so I just want to start off by saying thank you for spending time with us for this next hour. I appreciate you. I see you. With that said, I've muted everyone upon entrance just to avoid background noise, but I can't stress enough, I'd love to hear from you. So feel free to turn your cameras on if you feel called to do so. Come off of mute, share your voice, speak your truth, ask your questions. We want to really use this hour to enrich your curiosities. So if you do come off of mute during this hour, you will be featured in our live recording that you can rewatch on Power to Fly. And with that said, I know we live in a world where everyone is multitasking all the time, but I invite you to be present with us and then rewatch this video later to take notes there. The last thing I'll say is make sure you follow us on socials and subscribe to our YouTube channel so you can keep up with all the great chats we've got in store for you. With that said, I'm going to pass the mic to our guest speaker, Tiana. Tiana, let us know a little bit about yourself, how you came to know about Power to Fly, and what you're excited to share with us today.
Sure. Thank you very much, Mariella, and thanks everybody for joining. I've been working fully remotely and as a freelancer, and with freelancers all powered by freelance platforms as Power to Fly for more than 10 years already. And in that time, I used the opportunity to travel the world as so-called digital nomad. So it's been like a real journey around the world, but also a journey in my professional career, starting as just a programmer, a member of a team, kind of a junior even at the beginning of my career, and then progressing towards more serious and responsible roles of managing the projects, and finally establishing my independent consulting, which I call remote startup setup, where I actually guide founders of tech startups from the business idea to the MVP launch, all in remote way, and all while working with freelancers via freelance marketplaces. For the win-win situation of everybody's better work-life balance and also growing software products in a super lean way, which is the idea and the goal of every startup. And I'm going to show in this presentation exactly how. The resources are there. You can also find my website later and the book with many more details, as this event is called Chat, and I'm really loving this format. I'm going to be super brief with the presentation and try to leave enough time for the actual chat. So today I'm addressing the people who are, let's say, on the other side of the freelance marketplaces, not the freelancers exactly, but it can also be used very well by freelancers to understand what the potential clients might need. So I'm addressing the people who want to leverage working with freelancers, leverage the gig economy, open talent economy, expertise on demand, all these terms are getting more and more popularity in order to launch or grow the business in a super lean way. We can move forward, Mariella. Yep. So when we talk about project management, long time ago, we agreed that we don't want those frozen requirements, meaning we specify everything, and then like one year later, we launch a product and nobody wants it anymore. This is not what people expected, etc., etc. So we decided to apply these lean and agile principles, which are principles that we really need to go deeply into on some other occasion. But just to make it quick, the idea is that we go in a really minimal iterations so that we really deliver something functional as soon as possible and get the feedback as soon as possible, and then adjust what we do next based on that feedback, so that we don't invest time, money, effort, stress, whatever, into something that is really not going in the right direction. So the idea here is not only to build the product right, meaning there are no bugs in our software, but to build the right product, the product that actually is desired, needed, people want it, they want to pay for this, this is actually solving their problem, making their lives better, and all of that. In order to achieve this, we really need to get this feedback as early as possible. So the moment they can start clicking around and doing at least something in our application, we need to go out with that and get this feedback. That's why we use these principles of lean and agile to do everything in these iterations and get the feedback and adjustments early. We can move to the next slide. Thank you. So we are always, whenever we talk about Lean and Agile, talking about the product artifacts. So you'll be always hear upon the iteration, when you get the feedback from your beta users or the market, etc. You adjust the product backlog by setting different priorities. You adjust your product roadmap, etc., etc. It's always about product artifacts, and we never talk about the team who is actually building this product. And the reason for that is simple, because it used to be one office, couple of full-time employees. So it's not like you're gonna change this every 2 weeks when you finish your iteration, right? It's kind of complicated. But nowadays, with the remote work and freelance marketplaces, we can actually do that. I don't mean literally fire the whole team every 2 weeks and hire another one, but adjust, introduce maybe somebody who can help with their skills, or adjust the workload of the people who are already in the team, have a one-time consulting if we need from somebody, etc. So we can adjust the team as well. So what we do upon each iteration, based on the feedback on our product, for example, the users are loving it. They say we have amazing features, but they're saying that it's very difficult to find a way around the application. So the UX is the bottleneck. We decide that we're going to either increase the workload of our UX person, or maybe if we don't have this person in our team, hire a UX person for the next iteration. Just a simple example. So this is how we adjust the team based on the feedback on the product. How we adjust the team based on the feedback on the team. It's usually done during the teamwork retrospective. It's a technique that can be done in various ways, but basically this is when you ask people where it is that we have the space for improvement and what it is that we are doing really well. And this is how we, for example, in one of my teams, we found that very often the front-end developers get their features reopened for fixing. So we started discussing, why is this happening? How come that we almost never get it right? And we understood that the UX behavior is too complicated for them to understand in written form specified. So we hired a person who is producing videos, explanatory videos for the desired UX behavior, which enable the front-end developers to do it right and no need to fix and reopen. So this is how we adjusted the team based on the feedback on the team work. We can move a little bit forward, Mariella, thank you. So now I'm gonna go into 10 tips, like the crucial points on how to manage and leverage a freelance team. So we decided that, yes, if we want to be lean and adjust our product after each iteration, but also adjust the team, because now we are not sitting in the office, we are not limited, we have the access to the global talent and the freelance marketplaces. But how do we do that? Because it is a little bit different managing such a transient and flexible team than managing a fixed team in the office when you have like full-time employees sitting there for like many years with you, et cetera, et cetera. So it's a little bit different. And for managers who are going maybe even like overnight now, transitioning to remote and finding out about the freelance marketplaces, et cetera, it might be a little bit confusing how to do this. So first principle, get relaxed about hiring. It used to be the last resort. Like if it's absolutely impossible that we do this in-house, then we go about hiring another person to the team. And it was obviously because it was difficult. This person doesn't fit in the office. We need a bigger office. We need computer. We need this. We need that. This person needs to live somewhere nearby so they can come to the office. And it's not easy to find the skills we need and the person that lives in the same town, et cetera, et cetera. So for all these reasons, we were always going to the step of hiring only if it was absolutely necessary. Now with this ease of having freelance marketplaces as Power to Fly, when it's really like a couple of clicks away, you can browse, you can check the references of previous clients, even this whole inconvenience of legal contracts, international payments, it's all taken care of by the platform. So it became that easy that we can actually hire early, hire often, hire whenever we need, even 1 hour of somebody's consulting time, right? So we can really go about hiring very early in the process. We can move to the next slide. Thank you. So this is one point why I say chat, because it can literally be a chat of 1 hour that can change the direction of your business. And very often I shock my clients when I tell them that in the beginning, we need even more people in our team than later down the road. Because traditionally it used to be, you start with a small team, then you grow over time. And then you're proud 1 year later when you say, I grew my business from 3 to 10 employees. But actually, very often you need more people in the beginning, because that's the moment when you are making crucial decisions. That's the moment when you want to decide which technology stack you're going to use. So you need to talk to software architect, because if you go and hire developers that have experience in the technology that is not the best for your product, and you start building, et cetera, you're going to be on the right, or not on the right track, right? Same thing happens with, for example, branding and marketing. I think we can move to the next slide, Mariella. Thank you. For example, many startups think that branding and marketing are something to invest in when we are close to the launch, because we are trying to limit our expenses, right? So when we are really close to the launch, now we really need a brand because we actually have to have the name and go out, then yeah, let's now talk to the marketing and branding people. But by that time, you already have the UI interface and everything else that maybe now needs to be redone. Why not hire branding strategists, for 1 week or a couple of days or a couple of consulting hours in the early stage, so that we can already build our product that is aligned with this idea of the brand that we want to launch when the product is ready. So by using the freelance marketplaces and working with freelancers and having this opportunity to work on as needed basis, we can easily have this opportunity in the very beginning, and not need to adjust and like redo things later, which in the end is of course saving time, money, and everything else. We can move a bit forward. Thank you. So yeah, it all sounds nice, but in the end, you also need to know in which order, which role to hire and on which terms. It's kind of a complex, so I have like a few articles and a chapter in the book on this in order to cover the details for each role. But I'm just going to give a couple of examples that I already actually mentioned. Like I almost always start with a software architect, and usually in my experience, it's up to 5 hours of their time. So even if they're expensive, and they are, because they're people who have experience in various technologies, you can afford this couple of hours and make sure that you're starting with the right tech stack and the right architecture, and then hire the developers who are experienced with this kind of technology, for example. Also, if you are trying to disrupt a very regulated market, like, for example, now there are many fintech startups and finances and all of that, it's kind of complicated. It's really good to have some financial and legal experts in the beginning, couple of hours of consulting to make sure that you're not doing something that in the end is going to put you in trouble. There are many platforms now dealing with education. I worked on some projects when it's about education of children. It's very specific. So it's really important at the beginning you talk to somebody who has experience with this, and not just trying to build something that to you looks nice, but it's not gonna be like that when a child starts learning from your application, et cetera, et cetera. So you need some domain experts in the beginning as well. So these are all the ideas in which order you need to hire people, for it to make sense. As I already mentioned, branding strategies before, the designer and all of that. And then there are the terms. We have long-term, short-term, full-time, part-time, or somewhere in between, 5 hours, 10 hours, 15 hours per week, on as needed basis, all of that. So some roles are good to be really long-term and full-time, I would say, for like a senior engineer, tech lead. Some roles are important, super important to be long-term, like testing, quality assurance, because this person really needs to be familiar with your system. But usually for a small startup, they don't have more work than a couple of hours per week. But it's better to have them long-term, even working on super part-time basis, than to have somebody jump in occasionally who doesn't know the system. Same thing goes, for example, virtual assistant. They need to know your tone of voice, how you reply to messages, all of that. So even if they work a couple of hours per week, you want to keep them long term. On the other hand, there can be somebody who is just short term with you, as I mentioned, like a branding strategist, or maybe designer even, who does a couple of weeks or initial design and then later just joins when you need some changes. So for each role, there are many rules. As I said, there are additional resources I can share about this, but just make sure that you think about this before hiring. Try to have kind of a roadmap of the people you want to work with in the first few months of your project. even though you might be adjusting this based on the feedback upon each iteration, but to have kind of like order in your mind and the nature of arrangement you want with each one of them, so that you can already have this framework, this structure in your mind prior to starting building a freelance team. Let's move a bit forward. Thank you. So imagine now this team is pretty transient. People are coming and going. There is also this term flash teams. I heard it comes from US military, I'm not sure. So it's pretty transient. People are literally coming and going all the time. So it can be hectic if you allow it to be. That's why the onboarding is super important. It needs to be efficient. So for example, if this person is staying for 3 weeks and they need 2 weeks to get onboarded, it's not going to pay off. It makes sense in the corporate environment when you have 2 weeks orientation going from department to department, but then you're going to stay for 20 years. In our case, it doesn't pay off. Also, imagine the core team being interrupted all the time, getting the same question for the people coming and going. So for this reason, the onboarding needs to be super efficient. What I do is usually I prepare a kickoff document where I have briefly everything from the company mission to the credentials to the test account for the platform, like everything is there, and the explanation of the tools and processes we use. But in order to explain the tools and processes, we also have to have these tools and processes in the first place. And this is also kind of a mistake that I see very often people doing, because they think that for a small team, management tools and processes are an overhead. But actually, it's super important because there is no other way that people can come and go and be there on as needed basis and drop by later on. Everybody's going to lose track. Even yourself, you can lose track of what's happening and who is working on what, when certain tasks are due, etc. So it's really important to have some kind of management tool. For complex projects, I use Jira. For more simpler ones, I use Trello or Monday.com. And some kind of processes. For example, I like using stand-up bots for Slack, where we have like asynchronous check-ins every day. And then we have only bi-weekly calls, which helps a lot. So whatever you decide, it's really important that you introduce from early stages, and then everybody knows what's happening. People who are getting onboarded can already read about this in the kickoff document, and they go and like hit the ground running, as we say. I already mentioned asynchronous stand-up calls, and this is super important, so-called async collaboration. It's something that is, of course, not used in the office environment and when everybody is together in the same space, physical space and time zone. But when you work with freelancers and they're in different time zones, they work on multiple projects, you cannot expect them to be 9 to 5 with that green dot next to their name in the chat available. So you need to introduce asynchronous collaboration. One of the most important things for that is clear specifications, which is actually a good general management practice. But in the office, you can kind of get away with this because you can always just tell somebody, oh, listen, I just remembered you need to do this, but it doesn't work when this person is sleeping in the Philippines at that moment because it's night over there. So in this case, you need to provide specifications in time. What I do for a 2 weeks iteration, I provide them 2 days in advance prior to the start of the iteration, so that the whole team can read, ask questions, analyze, whatever. So the moment we started the iteration, there are, let's say, no blocking questions. It can happen, but occasionally. So I can easily sleep or go running, leave my phone at home, whatever, everybody else as well. We are not running into burnouts. We can work on multiple projects, collaborations, get our experiences elsewhere. And when we check into the project in question, usually nothing is on fire, nobody's blocked, because we prepare the specifications in advance. There are, again, many more tips on how to introduce asynchronous collaboration successfully. Again, I have resources and articles on that I can share, but just mentioning here that it's super important if you work with freelance teams to introduce this kind of team collaboration. I think we can move a little bit forward. So yeah, this whole hiring needs to be aligned with the goals of the next iteration. I already mentioned a couple of times, but it also means that you as a leader, manager, founder, whoever is taking care of the project need to think about this a little bit ahead. And many managers who are like coming now overnight, as I said, like into this world from the office environment, are simply not used to that. If you work with somebody, even if they're in your team, but they are on some kind of part-time, on-demand basis, you need to tell them in advance that you're gonna need more of their work in the coming period. Of course, if you're hiring a new person, that needs to be done also a little bit in advance. So don't forget about this, because you're not gonna go there on Monday and everybody's in the office at your disposal. You need to inform them in advance. Many people work on multiple projects at the same time, and they need to know this. We can go a little bit further. Product reviews, it's something that we do upon each iteration. I already mentioned this a little bit. So whether, depending on the stage, it can be internal feedback or beta users, or already like it's live, so we already have the response from the market. So whatever it is, we conduct product review, and based on this feedback, we decide what's the goal of our next iteration and how we need to adjust the team structure, increasing, decreasing the workloads, getting new people, announcing to the people who are on demand if we're going to be needing them, and all of that. So this is based on the product. The next slide. And then the teamwork retrospective. I already mentioned the people who are familiar with Agile and Scrum already know this. There are also many fancy ways of doing this in a creative way, almost playing a game. But the bottom line is that the team shares their opinion on where they find the space to improvement and what they really loved, and the team should continue doing. There is also always this positive side, but this is where we try to learn more about our team and how we need to adjust our tools, processes, and also the structure of the team itself, because as I said, now we have this possibility while working with freelancers to actually adjust the team. We can go to the next slide. So yeah, we are talking about this transient teams, people coming and going. There is a lot of movement, and documentation is something that almost everybody finds boring and not so exciting. And many people think it's an overhead if you are in this very flexible environment and startups and small teams and all of that, but it is very important. I can say that even I forget on Monday what I said on Friday, because we all have so many things going on. And it's very nice when you have this in written, not to mention people who, as I said, join later down the road, or they've been away working on another project, etc. So it needs to be documented very well. Try not to put everything in chats, because you know what happens when you come online. There is a long thread in chat, so you have the option either to read everything, spend 2 hours just to find out that there was nothing relevant to you, or decide not to read and miss out on something relevant. So please don't do that. Whichever tool you use, Monday.com, Trello, Jira, whatever is relevant, put in the card itself, so that people who work on that, no matter at what time and which time zone, they can go and take a look. So try to keep all these things documented, even if you are just one person, like I'm a founder and I have one freelancer who started working with me. Start it immediately, because very soon you're going to hit the dead end if you don't do so. We can move to the next slide. Thank you. So this is one thing that is especially dear to me. I think that the professional relationships between people in the gig economy are much healthier than in the traditional environment, when we always had employers and employees, and somebody telling somebody when they need to show up and what they need to do. I mean, of course, it's not black and white, but it used to be more like that. And nowadays, everybody somehow service provider and consumer. For example, I'm providing my services as a startup consultant to my client. I am consuming a bunch of services, even though I'm a solopreneur, one person show, I'm consuming a bunch of services for my own thing. Like I had 4 people helping me with a book. I don't know how many people for my website, my slides, my whatever. Like simply, I need to delegate. So I consume services. And of course, on behalf of my clients, I hire the people I mentioned already, UX designers, software architects, programmers, all of that. So we are all service providers and consumers, and that leads to the fact that we are all collaborators rather than employees and employees. And the vocabulary goes more to something like, what's your usual approach? What would be your suggestion? How do you think we should start? When would you be available to do this? How do you do this on your other projects, etc.? So I think it's much healthier. People become more proactive, more creative, and they are more willing to come back to your project when you need them. again. So no matter if your role is like super high leadership role or you're just doing some simple task on the side, everybody is important in order to get it going all together, and we all collaborate on the same level, let's say. We can move. Thank you. So just before we wrap up, I just wanted to mention regarding the situation we found ourselves in this year. Anyway, entrepreneurship and startups always operate with high levels of uncertainty. That's kind of the idea. But when we have a global crisis, it's even more uncertain, everything that we are facing. So the parameters are changing every day. The market is changing. The needs are changing. People need something that they don't. They need something else even more, or they cannot afford this thing, or they think it's more crucial to afford something else. So things are changing really fast. So these, let's say, classic entrepreneurship questions now are popping up with even more frequency. So this is this moment when you need to decide whether you should proceed business as usual, pivot to another kind of a product idea. So you use what you already have, but to provide some different solution to some problem that became more relevant, or just pause, which is also completely legit. It's better to pause early and not invest more resources into something that is simply not relevant anymore, and then also opens the opportunity for you to start another business. And whatever decision you make, again, I have resources where I listed all the questions you need to ask yourself in order to make this decision. But whichever decision you want to make, this needs to be done as low cost and as early as possible, right? To minimize the damage. And also pivoting means, in a way, validating the business idea all over again, like you did in the first place with the original solution, original product, which again means like getting the feedback early, especially that you might not go with the first pivot you had in mind. It might be the fifth one. So you need to go out and validate all of those ideas. So all of that needs to be validated as low cost and as early as possible, which means we need to be even more lean. We need to make our iterations even more minimal than ever. And the good news is we have the freelance marketplaces, we have the gig economy, and we can have these flexible teams and independent experts, expertise on demand, help us in this situation. So I think that would be all for the presentation. And I would say that we have some nice time left for the chat. Looking forward.
Yes. Okay. So first of all, thank you for sharing this wealth of knowledge. You did such a great job putting it into concise and clear format. And I know that you're probably just scratching the surface. So again, we're going to send a rewatch email to the folks who are joining us live so that you get these resources that Tiana is mentioning. And then of course, when you rewatch, you can take notes vigorously there. So you all have submitted some great questions offline. We're going to use the rest of this. I guess we've got about 30 minutes left to go through your questions one by one, starting with this question here. So if you see your question come up on the screen, feel free to take yourselves off of mute or write in the chat box if you want to add any 2 cents or go deeper. If this is not your question and you have some reflections or you want Tiana to dive in deeper, again, feel free to come off of mute or write in the chat box. So let's take this first question here. What are the best digital platforms for finding physical service gigs? I'm not interested in online gigs that you can find on Fiverr.
As I am completely online and digital, actually, I cannot really help with that, especially that those physical services are usually very local. So it's something that is probably better to ask your local community, but whichever platform you use, there are always these general features that you should pay attention to, like references from previous clients, verified payment methods, also the importance of setting the input and the desired output clearly, the milestones that you need to set. I don't know what's applicable depending on the gig that you need to set like as minimal as possible so that you can check in early and see how it's going. So, I mean, these are all the things that you can use with all the marketplaces, but I cannot really tell you the names of the marketplaces for physical services.
So you have to do some more research, local research, right? And just to shout out where we are calling from, the folks who are joining us live here. So I'm in Argentina, Tiana's in Brazil. We've got more folks representing Argentina, Mexico, Salt Lake City, Utah. Awesome. So if you didn't get a chance to write in the chat box where you're calling from, I would love to know and give you a shout out as well. So yes, let's continue on to this next question here. Is there a recommended amount of gig workers that you advise founders to begin with?
In most of the cases, in the first, let's say, 6 months, when we are starting a startup, we work with around 10 people on different kinds of arrangements, starting with software architect and domain expert. Then we continue towards the tech lead, senior engineer. Then we add some junior engineers. Usually, very much at the beginning, we have again branding, UX, UI. Very early, I almost immediately start with QA or testing experts. Pretty soon we go about with copywriting if we want the landing page, because sometimes you can actually do validation without any coding by just providing a landing page and some kind of a form with submission that goes to the email. So you don't actually need any coding, but you can already understand the market a little bit. But then it's really important to have good copy, right? So then you can work with the copywriter very early and get the initial idea kind of validated before you start actually producing the product. So copywriter is crucial there. So I would say that in the first 6 months, for sure, we work with around 10 people on different arrangements.
Great, thank you for that. So I'm going to flag a comment and a question here that we've got. Kimberly is calling from Virginia in the States, and she has a question for you, Tiana. I'm just now exploring the gig economy, both as someone who may enter it and leverage it down the road. The great appeal to me is variety, autonomy, and exposure to many different problems. Compared to standard full-time jobs, do you anticipate that the need or opportunities for service gigs will increase in comparison in the future?
For sure, for sure. I mean, especially now that the remote work is becoming almost mainstream, I would say. It became widely acceptable. Now, obviously, it's much more easier because it's impossible to be a gig worker, a freelancer, and then running from one office to another, right? But now that we are all remote, it's much, much easier. We have all these platforms that are helping with all sorts of things, from marketplaces to payments to like productivity tools, management tools, whatever. So it's really becoming way, way easier. Collaboration tools, like you name it, like it's all there. The technology is there. It's mostly about the mindset, but more and more people are realizing how important it is. And we are going away from those, like, I'm going to outsource just like simple tasks, to actually outsourcing or delegating or consuming expertise on demand, even some like C-level roles. Now you have organizations who offer services of experience like senior C-level executives. So you as a simple early stage startup, you can have a couple of hours of somebody that you never dreamed of that they would be like working with you, but you can afford it nowadays. And imagine a game changer that can be.
Great. And just because we had a chance to speak offline before we started recording, Tiana, I'd love to hear your perspective on responsibility in this new world of, working remote and freelance and the gig economy. How can we avoid, everyone working, or more people working remotely, but not really being connected to nature and themselves and, their communities and essentially, driving more separation and exploiting the world. I say this because you're in a surfer town in Brazil, and I know that. So I would love to just hear your perspective on how you are approaching it.
Actually, any technology is as good or as bad as we know how to use it. So the technology is there to disconnect us so that we all stay in home in pajama whole day and never see each other, or to connect us to people all around the world, and we make new collaborations. For example, my book author, we never met in person. We met on an online event similar to this one, and then we wrote a book together, and many, many amazing things that I've done with people that I would never actually have a chance to meet. And also, I have to say, in my personal example of working fully remotely for 10 years, my offline life actually boomed because I was able to travel. I was able to be in the places where I can do the hobbies I like doing. I was able to join various communities based on entrepreneurship, based on sports and hobbies and many, many other things I have. So my offline life, connection to nature, outdoors activities, social life, like how every aspect of it improved significantly since I work remotely, because it gave me all these possibilities, so I don't have to be in the center of the town, in the office, commuting, spending hours, all of that. I agree that there are many people who then ended up staying at home too much. But as I said, the technology is there. It's up to us how we use.
Yes, great response. I know I put you on the spot there, but I just wanted to get your personal reflection on that. Great. Okay, so let's move on to this next question here. Again, if you see your question come up on the screen, feel free to hop off mute. Thanks for turning your cameras on. I see you. Okay, what are the legalities around gig work? And I love that you mentioned, this example of you working with a children's book or something like that. I don't know if it was an application or what the project was for children, and you had to make sure that you knew what you were doing by speaking with the right people to make sure that your product served the demographic. Can you dive in deeper either with that example or give more examples?
When people mentioned legalities, I thought maybe they thought about the contracts between freelancer and the client or something like that. In that case, well, I have to say it depends on the country, and in many countries the bureaucratic systems are still very outdated and really not being able to keep up with what's happening. So in many countries, it's still kind of complicated, but I think with this gig economy gaining popularity, it's going to get better. That's why the freelance marketplace and these kind of platforms help, because then somehow you work around it. So you don't really care where this other person is, because imagine if for every single freelancer, you need to understand how it works in their country, the contracts, payments, bank accounts, accounting system, it would be impossible. But when you work with a freelance platform, you have this intermediary, you only do everything with them, and then they do it with the freelancer on the other side. So you usually see all the contracts, workload, invoices, everything in the platform transparently in one place. You can deal with that with the intermediary, and then they deal with the rest on their side. Usually in most of the countries now you have this possibility to be registered as self-employed. In some countries it's called micro-entrepreneur as well. And then you have the taxes that apply in your country. So basically you do the invoice and then you pay the taxes in your country based on that. But it really depends on the country. You would have to check with your local accountant. But we are all hoping that eventually it's going to get more globalized and more easier, because many people, especially in the world of digital nomads who don't have fixed residency, are running into many problems. Many of these systems rely on you receiving something via snail mail, and you're like, where where is this address where I'm going to receive this? And very often this is something that you need to use in order, for example, to log into the online system, and then it's a blocker. And I had this happening, and I received it to an Airbnb, which I already left. Luckily, the landlord was kind enough to print it and send to me and something like that. So I'm hoping, and I'm sure actually it's going to happen, that soon these systems are going to become very, very easier to use for remote freelancers.
I experienced that as well, that as far as echoing on what you're saying is that it's kind of behind, and we're moving quickly because we want to, evolve, and we want to do more of what we love, which oftentimes is, online these days, especially with the work that we do. So yes, it's kind of like we're taking a couple of steps forward, but then we have to deal with, like you said, the snail mail, and it's like, what?
Exactly.
Great. Okay, so let's move on to this next question here. What's the best way to hold gig employees accountable?
So first of all, you always choose a person that already has good references on their profile. If somebody spent many years building a profile, and they're not probably gonna just disappear on you or something like that, and also destroy their reputation. Then it's really important that the input you provide is very clear, bullet points, all the information needed, the desired output described really clearly, and confirmed, the understanding confirmed on both sides. Then the milestones, whenever possible, to set the milestones so that you can check in occasionally. It's always a good idea to have the milestones suggested by the person who is actually working on it, so that they make sense in the natural flow of things, how they do it. This is usually when you're working on fixed projects or one-time gigs, when you're working long-term with people, and especially in this agile mode, when you have all these iterations and stuff, then very often you have just an agreement, this person is going to work, the programmer is going to work 20 hours per week, and this is the amount of hours we have, and then per iteration we agree on the tasks that need to be done. So it's not like we have the whole gig already set up in advance. But again, also it depends on this human-to-human relationship. As I mentioned, if you treat everybody as a collaborator, people are more likely to also be responsible in the way behave with you. Also, sometimes we are not even aware of that, but our input is not clear enough, because very often we are not sure if we are delegating because of lack of time or lack of expertise. Lack of time means I can provide clear instructions because I know how to do this, I just don't have the time, so I'm going to provide instructions and ask you to do this for me. But very often it's because I'm lacking the expertise. In this case, I need you to suggest me the next steps. I need you to suggest the milestones, etc. And then, yeah, I'm going to hold you accountable on that, but I need to be patient and listen to your suggestions because I'm hiring you, because I need your expertise in the first place. So very often, instead of just being sometimes, let's say, even paranoid that the other person is not going to do the things right, we can start from ourselves and get this clarity on why are we getting this person, what are we expecting for this person, what kind of pain point they're solving for us, which result would make us happy, and then like convey this to them in a clear way.
I love that you say treat them as collaborators, because I find that I thrive in those settings as well. And I find that that is actually going beyond and actually evolving the way that we work, so that you can enjoy the work and feel like you are, contributing and not just, I'm on the clock, I'm off the clock.
Exactly. I do this in Uber even, very often a driver asks you, so which route you prefer? I'm like, I don't know, you're the expert. I'm just sitting here. So you choose the route. And then they feel much more like, willing to make it the best route because you respect them as somebody who's providing a high quality service. And in most of the cases, it's much more likely that they know the best way.
Great. Thank you for that. Okay, let's move on to this next question here. Do you have a favorite or recommended way to find gig workers?
So I'm a huge fan of freelance marketplaces. So unless I have a very solid direct contact recommendation to somebody, experience with somebody, I always use the freelance marketplaces. It's super convenient. It gives me also the possibility for the type of work I do, because I hire on behalf of my clients. So it's also easier for me to have like everything in one place, so they can also like log in, have it all transparent, and see like what kind of team I have for them and how I manage them. And so like altogether, it's much easier to have everything in one place. And as I said, also contracts, payments, all of that. The platforms also have these escrow accounts, which guarantee safety of the payments for both sides, and many other tools. I mean, obviously we pay the fee, but it's service like any other. I'm super happy to pay. Also, I have to say, as a freelancer, now that I have good profiles, it's the best SEO I can get, because the platforms have the ways of showing my profile to like in the search scores, right? So that I'm almost always in the top scores. And as I said, it's the best SEO I can get. So I'm super happy to pay for the fee because I think it's a great service they provide. And as I said, in 99% of the cases, I would recommend the freelance platforms. Depends on type of work. You can find different platform. But unless you have really like a solid direct relationship with somebody, the freelance marketplaces are the way to go. Just think about booking your accommodation. You're going to go via booking.com or similar platform and not just search randomly online for, I don't know, an apartment in such and such place. You go somewhere, you put your dates, number of rooms, such and such, and you get everything you need from the platform, right?
Great. Thank you for that. Okay, so let's move on to this next question. How can I best support my star employees or collaborators, as you say, to reach their full potential while also making sure they feel comfortable at my company?
Actually, this was already half answered. If we stop calling them employees and start calling them collaborators, I'm not saying that it's something offensive being an employee, but just like to make it even more like emphasized that this person is an expert, even if what they do is, let's say, fairly simple. They are an expert in this because they've done this many more times than you did. So they are an expert. And by treating them as one, you're going to get them to be more let's say, creative, proactive, and reach their full potential, as mentioned, comfortable working at the company, coming with new suggestions, being available to come back in even when they're busy because they like working with you, and all of that.
Great. Awesome. Okay, so let's move on to this next question here. How do gig jobs and pandemic unemployment insurance work together?
So this is where we are going back to the outdated bureaucratic systems, because in many countries, self-employed people, freelancers, have not so secure positions as full-time employees. I'm hoping that this will change in many countries. It's already like happening, so that you have the right to this government help in the same way as the employees who are not earning at the moment or something like that. Depends on the country. It's still not the same, but it's getting there. On the other hand, unless it's pandemic time, it's highly unlikely that you're going to lose all your freelance projects at the same time, which can happen with a full-time job. So there is some security in this diversity. But yeah, for sure, now that that this is happening, the gig economy booming and everything, the governments will have to find a way to make it easier, so that also people who are doing freelancing have the possibility when they are, you know, sick or whatever happens, that they have some help in that situation as well.
Awesome. I have a private question here. Are there any freelance unions that you know of? And I'm assuming, just to your point of, you know, how bureaucracy is a little behind and freelancers
the
and gig
unions,
economy.
no, I don't know, but that's also maybe because I've been moving so much that maybe I'm not aware so much of the local communities. But unions, not really. I really don't know about that.
Okay, we'll research that together online.
You should.
Okay, so this next question here: how can I help the startup I'm at while also building my personal brand?
Okay, so let's assume you're doing, for example, marketing, digital marketing for the startup, or any other role, right? So you can decide that now you're going to have your personal brand where you're offering digital marketing services, and that your first client is going to be actually this startup. So you go talk to them and ask them to somehow adjust this relationship so that you move from the status of employee to the status of independent expert offering the service. Again, depending on the country, probably there would be some legalities in how you change this contract and payments and what kind of benefits you have. Probably it could be that you're going to have less benefits, I don't know, depending on the country, but you're going to have this opportunity to build your personal brand for some other professional benefits. It could be that the startup is a little bit like closed-banded, so that they feel that if they help you with your personal brand, they're going to lose you to the other clients. But then again, if you're doing your work well and you're not happy with the environment, you're always going to go for another work. So instead of like cutting on the opportunities for the people who work with you, it's better to help them grow, right? And they're going to be happy to continue working with you on any kind of arrangement. So I would just say that you set up your goal, what your personal brand should be, how you want it to be, and then ask this startup to just somehow rearrange the relationship so that this starts happening. And probably it wouldn't change much in the service and work you offer to them. It's just going to be like packaged differently and more aligned with what you want to do.
I love this question because throughout the months of hosting and speaking with guest speakers, career pivoting and questions about how to career pivot comes up a lot, especially now. So I love that, you know, more and more people are interested in focusing on something that they want to do that will fulfill them while, you know, bringing in income, obviously, because no one wants to leave a steady thing to go to something that, you know, might not happen. So I love that you're saying, you know, to be wise about offering your service, you know, not letting them down, still doing a great job, and then using that to build your portfolio. Great.
But personal brand is almost always more fulfilling, because even if like 10 of us are doing, let's say, product management, as I do, each one of us is going to have certain personal touch based on our personality, life experience, whatever, you know, that it's in our background. So like in traditional corporations, we would all be called just product manager 1, product manager 2. And in this case, if we go by our name and our personal brand, we can offer this personal touch. And this personal touch of mine can be aligned with some client, with some other not. Yours might be better. And I'm completely fine to lose this client to you, because I'm also not going to enjoy working with them, right? So I think it's like this kind of independent expertise on demand, in many cases, can be like a win-win for everybody.
Awesome. Great. Thank you for that. Okay, so let's move on to this next question here. Is it possible to be a full-time gig worker? How can I safely transition into gig work?
So yeah, it's possible. I've been doing this for 10 years. I've been, as I said, traveling the world and everything with 100% income from freelancing. So, and I know many other people. So yeah, it is possible. I did this in kind of unsafe way where I quit my job. I started traveling with the savings. And when I ran out of savings, I started looking for jobs. So it was kind of a like, you know, like a little bit like there was some tension. So I would definitely recommend that you do start in a safe phase, as you mentioned, by having some super part-time gig while keeping your full-time job. And when it starts going well and you feel comfortable, then you give notice at your full-time job and then you move to the gig job. The beauty of the gig work is that you can have different arrangements, as I mentioned. So you can start with something super part-time and flexible and later grow it into something more.
And can you talk a little bit about how to start to kind of, like, as you said, plan and be ahead of it? So how would one start to build their portfolio? And then how can one start thinking of how to negotiate, let's say, or build their proposal as you know, the services that they offer? Because I know it can be tailored and it should be tailored to fit your needs and your desires.
It should be. So usually like this, in order to distinguish ourselves, we need to offer some kind of unique skill, right? And usually when we think about our skills, it's like, oh, these skills are very common. Like I'm a software engineer, yeah, millions of others. I'm a product manager, millions of others. So you feel really frustrated. But then you think the combination of my skills, they are unique to me. So I need to offer this as the combination of all my skills, and not only the formal skills that are from the university, etc., but all kind of life experiences you had as hobbies, volunteering, friends, whatever you've done, to offer some kind of unique skill service, right? And also the way you present it. If you present it as a CV, like, so this is when I did my kindergarten, this is when I did my university, like people are, okay, impressive, but you know, like, what can I do with this? But if you offer it as a solution to their pain point, they're gonna want to, even if they never thought they want to hire somebody, they never posted a job opening, but they felt certain pain point, and then you come and you're offering a solution, they're gonna be interested in you without asking you when did you graduate, etc. You can go into those details later, but you need to provide a solution to their problem. So in my case, it's usually the founders who are non-technical founders. They want to focus on investment, sell their business. They don't know how to bridge the business and technical side, how to go about like you know, building the team, to build a product and all of that. So very often they start diving into this on their own. They are up to here with everything, and then they start almost always with the same story. So I want to build a business, I want to talk to investors, I want to all this, but all of a sudden I'm just talking to programmers and we don't understand each other. And like I all the time hear all the same story, and then I offer the solution to them. They are buying it even before they start going into details of, as I said, my CV. That can come later. It's already there in LinkedIn and whatever. So try not being passive with your CV, but actively proposing the solution.
I love that. And then speaking of LinkedIn and other kind of social medias, how do you recommend leveraging that?
I think it's amazing. LinkedIn is amazing. I made many amazing connections there just by like joining some thread discussions. You join a discussion, you share your opinion, your experience, somebody else replies. After a couple of replies, you're like, this is interesting. Maybe I want to talk to this person more. Then something comes out of that. It's amazing. It's basically a super easy way of sharing with people, connecting with people. And again, as I said, any other tool and technology depends how you use it. But I think LinkedIn can be a really good tool.
Awesome. Thank you for that. Okay, so I believe this is our final question, and we've got about 7 minutes left. So take your time with this question, and then I'd love for you to end with some food for thought, and then let us know how we can connect with you once we finish with this chat. So what's the best way to handle multiple gigs? How do you know when you've got too much on your plate or length of time it takes to do a project? So bandwidth, right? And work-life balance, as you mentioned in the beginning.
So it really depends on the type of work you do. Because some type of work by its nature is way more like long-term and requires more dedication, and some type of work can be done with like one-time gigs. So it depends on that. In my case, since I'm like guiding the whole project for a long period of time and the whole team, so it's not something that I can do like one time easily. So I need to be there, I need to commit. So when I'm starting a project, that I'm going to be there for some amount of time. But there is one golden rule I have. I never, even if, for example, I have enough time for 2 new projects, I never like take both of them at the same time. I leave at least a couple of weeks in between. So I say to one person, if I find that they are like, it's more urgent case, okay, we're going to start now. And then I asked another person to wait for a couple of weeks, because starting a project requires a lot of focus, because you need to understand what's needed, what the current situation is, what's the point A, what's the point B, where we want to go. So I never start more than one project at a time. I always leave at least a couple of weeks, even if, as I said, I have the time in hours, but it's not all about the hours. It's also about the headspace and focus. So that's it. And then again, it depends on the type of work. If I need to do some work which is a bit flexible, like I'm just preparing some documentation or something, it's easier for me to accept that even when I'm busy. But if it's something that's really major, when I need to onboard many new team members and something that like requires really full attention, then I'm really trying carefully to understand when I can start focusing on that project. And also there is one super important thing to understand. When you're working as an independent expert, there is work and there is work outside of work, which means all of these conversations on LinkedIn, talking to potential clients, talking to many clients, potential clients that you never will land a job with, but you learn by talking to them, joining online events, networking, learning, providing, creating content, which is good again for building your network. So there is all this work outside of client work, paid hours, etc. So they're not paid hours, but they do pay off. And you need also to incorporate that in your time planning and your financial planning, because as I said, they're not going to pay off immediately. So you need to make sure that you have enough of paid hours and enough time for those other hours.
I love that. And I love that you are hitting the nail on the head as far as setting your boundaries. What a great tip to not accept two projects at once, especially because, you know, in the startup world, and I'm sure in the corporate world as well, there's just this rhythm that is, you know, this really fast train moving. And so if you're starting to do work, you know, as your own founder, to just not stick with that same rhythm so that you don't experience burnout and then hate the choice that you made to start doing this on your own.
Yes.
Can you give us some of your personal, the ways that you personally enjoy, you know, rewarding yourself for your hard work, or, you know, how you can make sure that you're keeping your boundaries set and you don't experience burnout?
So for me, I'm really addicted to water sports. That's why I'm at the moment living in the place where I'm living, and having something that I'm extremely looking forward to after work, and something that that has to be on at certain time. So it cannot be postponed, because there is this time of the day when the conditions are good. This motivates me to finish my work efficiently. So usually I wake up really early with the sun. I work super efficiently because I want to have my afternoon kitesurf session, and that's what keeps me productive. And this is what I would recommend to everybody, to find something that you're really passionate about to do after work. And then there is no procrastination, because like you're so focused on what you want to do after work that you just want to finish the work and then go out, do your thing. So that helps. It's simple and it helps. It works.
I love that. I love that. Okay, so I guess we'll take that for the food for thought, to make sure that we're looking forward to what happens after work, so that we can be efficient when we're on work, and then we go and enjoy whatever it is that our hobbies or our preferences are. Thank you so much, Tiana. I appreciate your transparency, all of the tips. You know, you've dropped so much knowledge here. I see some folks applauding as well. Can you remind us how we can get in touch with you? I know you said you have a book out. How can we, you know, learn more about you and support the work that you do?
Yes, thank you also for the amazing facilitation, and you guys for the engagement and so many really good questions. You can find me by my name and last name on LinkedIn, which I would love to connect over there, because as I said, I'm really active there. Then there is my website, remotestartupsetup.com. I think it's also at the event page. And the name of the book is Your Company with No Walls. Again, there is the landing page with this name. I think it's also on the landing page of this event on Power to Fly. And I'd be more than happy to connect and get feedback from you, and just like keep in touch in this global world of open talent.
Yes, thank you so much. Okay, well, thank you everyone for joining us for this full hour. Tiana, thank you so much as well, and enjoy the rest of your day. Go ahead and go kite surfing or whatever it is that you're going to do.
Thank you guys. All the best.